Aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Brings us to item number 7, the reports. We're on a roll. So first report.
Confidential, no?
Oh, is there 2?
Yeah.
So sorry, can I have a mover and second for the confidential minutes on the 11th of December? Moved Councillor Ferniho and seconded by Councillor Gully. All those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Now we will move on to reports. The first one being item 3.1. Welcome, Renee and Leith.
Kia ora. Through the chair, we take this report as read and open for questions.
That's very quick. Thank you. Questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Green.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if you could clarify the funding of these roles. So my understanding was that there was a governance fund of 880k. Has that been fully distributed, or will the funding of 39k come from that fund, or will it come from a separate fund, and where so?
I'm not sure about the 800,000k where that came from, but this is definitely budgeted for. It is in a separate GL account though, iwi capability.
So we receive, I think it's, and maybe the CEO can correct me here, is it 880k from government for governance funding? I think that was the figure mentioned in our first meeting.
Leonie.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that 880. Any of my team? No.
Leith.
Through the chair, I suspect Councillor Greening is referring to the remuneration pool set by the Remuneration Authority. This is separate to that remuneration. This is a separate, coming from a separate GL code in the iwi capability space.
Thank you, Leith.
Any other questions? Councillor Woods.
Yes, so just touching on that, Leith, what is that budget amount?
It was 50,000k because we were, did have 3 committees previously, but now because we've only got the 2 committees plus the council would be down to $40,000 per annum.
Councillor Ferniho.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thanks for this. I just have one question. We have 9 iwi in Tasman District Council. How is the decision made of who would be on the committees, please?
So this is a conversation that happens at the iwi chairs and the iwi CEOs. So that's a collective of the iwi across Te Tauihu, and they source the people that they deem appropriate, and then they would go through the due diligence processes through council. So, yeah.
Councillor Woods.
And Renee, how does this add to or possibly compete with the role of your team?
It's quite separate to the role of our team. We're operational, so these roles would be sitting at the governance level with yourselves.
So in terms of the scope of work that your team does, you're collating and providing information to us on behalf of the iwi, and then yes or no? No?
As council officers, we can't talk on behalf of iwi, but we do provide guidance, especially to our staff internally. But these roles would sit at the governance table to provide another point of view, another voice from the community at the decision-making table.
Councillor McNamara.
Are our role, our requirements under the legislation fulfilled without these roles?
We do provide other ways of meeting the legislative requirements, but this was something that was agreed to several years ago. Can I talk about like removing those roles? Yeah, it's another measure that the council committed to within their long-term planning to have these roles in place.
Okay, Councillor Kinnemoth.
Thank you. On that theme, so with this role, will it have to publicly provide a allegiance to the King and Queen like we've had to do on the marae? Does it follow the standard code of practice for meetings here, that sort of thing?
Through the chair. So appointed members don't swear the oath that elected members do, but as part of our, for want of a better word, contractual arrangements with them, there is material in there about responding and complying with the council's code of conduct and standing orders and attendance of meetings and those kinds of things.
So this role would have the same benefits as any other councillor around the table here, including likes of there's recompense for the $39,000 that we saw here. So that is for attending the meetings, any background history that has to be done and that sort of thing. So does this role also attract allowances such as that are currently available to the councillors around the table here?
Through the chair, I'll just note that the appointed member on council cannot vote, so they are not exactly the same as an elected member sitting around this table. Appointed members on committees can vote. In terms of the expenses, my understanding is no, that they don't get the same expenses as under our policy, but I will have to go away and confirm that.
And one last question, if I could, well, several more, but on this topic. So it equates to about $1,000 per meeting for each representative that comes along here. Now, how's that divvied up? Is it on an hourly rate, or is it so many dollars per meeting? How's that? I'm presuming they will send you an invoice per meeting. That'll be $1,000 a meeting or something like that.
Previously, it was done on a quarterly basis, and it's just the flat amount across the year, not per meeting.
Oh, so not per meeting, but it still is right up there at $1,000 a meeting, isn't it? That's a lot of money that we're expecting our ratepayers to top up with.
13,000 per annum per role, yes.
So we've got a budget for it. Does that mean that we can negotiate at all with these prices?
If I can just assist perhaps in terms of what is our current policy for the remuneration of the likes of our Audit and Risk Committee. As a council, we've discussed bringing in advisory members as we need them to enterprise activities. So what's the policy in terms of meeting fees for appointed members? And is that available to have a look at, or is it set in stone? What is it currently?
These roles were based on that policy.
So the answer currently is this is the policy we have. If we want to look at remuneration formulas for appointed members, like the State Services Commission, whereas a meeting fee and a half reading fee day, that sort of thing, that would be for another discussion. But at the moment, this is based on that policy. Just what I've got this on is that I'm happy to move this in terms of honouring what has been a partnership around this table and a lot of work to get to that partnership from the last term. And this is about governance and diversity of views and skill sets around this table to have right information to make decisions and to do that on behalf of all of our district. And Matt's presentation was a reminder that there is significant interest and from our iwi entities and whānau and hapu in terms of this is home where we will invest and we are investing and we will continue to invest and we're wanting to be around the table. And I did check in with Renee earlier in the week in terms of making sure that we have capacity from iwi should this decision go past to get the positions filled, because last term that didn't happen. But on those basis, in terms of good governance and where we need specific skill sets, we already do this. I'm happy to move that, and I cut you or two.
I'm happy to second, and I just want to speak about my experience with iwi representatives on the former sewerage business unit. And actually, Matt was one of those when I originally was appointed onto that as a council representative. So I've got 9 years of experience with that, and they add massive value to how we do our job. And it's not a popular job, particularly within iwi, of being a representative on a sewerage business unit. I can tell you, it's not easy to get a representative at times, but they really help us with our value and with understanding their cultural perspectives and how we operate. And it's not easy because we discharge to the sea out of Bells Island, and that isn't particularly popular with some of the iwi groups. In fact, they spoke at our last consent that I was involved in, and they described the area out there as their fridge, which it is, and it's an area where I fish as well. So they have really added value, and I think that's the biggest example that I can give to where it's worked really well. It would have been better if we had had more representatives last term, but that's in the past. And if I look at iwi, my first family's engagement with iwi here was in 1843, and it didn't go terribly well, but the iwi is still here. My family's still here. And I think that's what's going to happen going forward in the future. And we need to remember that. So I see this as a positive step. And if you look at what our budgets are, 39,000 isn't a lot when you see some of the other stuff that we have to do. And I think we get real value from it. So that's why I'm seconding the motion, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Kinmont.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So my last 2 terms on council, I've sat on the Nelson Tasman Regional Land Business Unit, which now has a new name, lest I forget. And on my first 2 years on there, we had Anaru. And he brought some very valuable contributions to the conversations about the land unit. However, when he left, that seat has sat vacant because there has been no capacity. There has been nobody that stepped in. And often I would raise, we've got another empty seat, what is happening? And the response we always got is there is no capacity. So I sit here today asking, how has that capacity changed? And is this fee that we are talking about paying these representatives, are they going to get paid when they don't turn up? Like if we sign them in and say, yep, we're going to have them come and join us, and then they do a no-show, are we still set to pay them, albeit their 13K?
No, through the chair. So 2 parts to that question. So first, there's already been names put forward for these. So there are people raring to go. Second, I mean, we are paying these appointed members on a quarterly basis, and our expectation is that they show up for meetings, but we are not going to do it on a per meeting basis, the same that elected members get paid if they don't show up for meetings.
Councillor Kinmont, then McNamara, then Alison Greening.
Thank you. Through the chair, I got a question. This. So you're going to pay someone for not turning up? I'm sorry, my blood's starting to boil here. There must be a better way of being able to pay for efforts that have been involved than just quarterly. Here's got 39,000 every quarter. We pay 12,000 to them. And we need to make sure, as a group, that we get value for the money that we're putting in there. So could I ask the staff to possibly review how the payment systems are done so that it is done on effort, not on absence?
So I might take this one, Lee. So I just want to reiterate what Lee said in the last argument, is that let's be careful what stones we throw in glass houses. So every member elected around here turns up by choice and commitment to their community every meeting, and some members turn up more than others. Some members have more responsibilities than others. So this has never been a fair playing by the hour meeting rate. In fact, if I asked Councillor Walker what her hourly rate is, you would be appalled. So we need to be really careful in terms of, I think there's an opportunity to have a look at our remuneration policy for appointed members at a point in time. That's not the paper that's in front of us today. But I guess the question I'm asking of this table is, are we enhancing our governance role and our decision capabilities by honouring a partnership that we already have? So the mechanics of who and how people get paid is one that we all have to ask ourselves in the work that we do and the role that we're appointed to. Is there another question, Councillor Kinnamoth?
There is. It's a bit evolved. And I take on board what Councillor Maley has been saying about how it's enhanced the committees that they've been on in the past, and how that the lens that the iwi look through look more holistically, and that for the sewerage outfalls, it is abhorrent to the iwi. And it's also abhorrent to myself and a lot of other fishing people and other people who have to use these waters. So there's also other people out there who can provide resources, expertise and ability, and are doing some very good scientific work over and above what the iwi are doing. Not saying that it shouldn't be part of the process, but it's not the sole. So that's probably my comment at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnamoth. Councillor McNamara, then Ellis.
Now I forgot my question. Do our community board members sitting on committees have a vote? I just question the ability for a lobby group essentially to have a vote around the table when we could have other lobby groups also attending, or community boards attending.
So, Councillor McNamara, at the risk of me being thrown off this table by my folly colleagues, I think it's an offensive analogy in terms of iwi partnerships as a lobby group.
I'm sorry, but Mr. Chair, they don't swear the oath to represent the region as a whole. They're there for their own interests. Now, I don't have a problem with them lobbying their interests. I take aboard, the comments in the public forum and the input they have, and I value that. However, when it comes around the table, they are voting in their interests. They're not sworn to vote in the interests of the whole community, as we are. Even our Maori ward representative had to take an oath to vote for the interest of the whole community. So it is a different vote than everybody else around the table has.
So I guess my question when you decide which way you vote on this, Councillor McNamara, is your belief if their desire to partner and be around this table is for the better of the wider community, or is it just solely for the iwi representatives? And I would strongly suggest that it's for the place that is home, wanting to strive and be the best that it can. But that will be each and every member's opportunity to decide how they vote when they come to the vote. But Councillor Ellis and Councillor Greening.
Thank you, through you, Deputy the Chair. I'll be voting for this today. I've heard from a lot in the community who are against this proposition. But as I've considered all of the options and compared it with what has happened in reality, it's quite different. So I have seen how well this can work with having an iwi representative on one of our committees last term. I have experienced that it's a collaborative approach, and I have seen through a number of years, even before I was on council, what has turned out good for Māori has turned out very good for the rest of the population as well. And so I value that input around the table. To me, it is the most efficient way of getting the view of local iwi. We have had, we have a department within council that helps us in some parts of it. We currently have the Māori ward councillor, but each of them seems to and we're still seeing how that role in itself is going to pan out over time, and we're not going to have that in 3 years' time. So it is another little piece where we can have that view around the table. I don't see that democracy is being compromised, because at the full council table, where people expect to see the views of the elected members come through, there is not a vote. And I've never seen a situation where it's had the view of iwi has had a detrimental impact. So I'll be supporting this today. I find it a very valuable resource for us to use, the same as I've found the resources that we have on the Audit and Risk Committee have been very useful. It is just a niche role that works for the benefit of our whole community in the end.
Thank you, Councillor Greening.
Thank you, Chair. Look, as the wording of the motion is currently drafted, I can't support the motion, and I'll explain why, and I'll go through my rationale as best I can. First of all, the voting rights are not consistent. So you have a non-voting right on council, but a voting right on delegated committees. So it's inconsistent for a start. They probably should all be non-voting for consistency. That allows input, and it also addresses, I think, the valid issue raised by Councillor McNamara, that these committees, unlike the joint committees, which are very focused on sewerage and so forth, more focused committees, which have Māori representation on them, are very different. These committees look at the district as a whole. And I think that is a conflict for voting participation on these committees. So the voting rights needs to be made consistent, and that currently is not the situation. And I think that creates a problem, that one can have voting on delegated authority from full council in a committee, but can't have voting rights on the full council, which gives the delegated authority. That makes no sense to me. And that needs to be corrected. And if it isn't, then I'll have to vote against this. I also want to talk to a statement made earlier at the start, which was this has been set up from the full council on the 3rd of November 2022, which is over 3 years old, was made by a different council and was made before the referendum. We now have a Māori ward representative on the 2 committees we have in full council, which we didn't have at the time that resolution was made. And I think the Māori ward representative meets our obligations under legislation, and as staff have already acknowledged, not appointing these advisors does not breach that obligation, because we've met it through other avenues. And I think, part of my rationale for supporting the Māori ward was that it would mean that we do not need to have these additional advisors on council or committees. And my feeling is to appoint them now undermines the value of the Māori ward, which we were really encouraging the community to support. They didn't. And I think there's an element of we need to acknowledge that, which we don't seem to be doing, but also we need to be reinforcing the value of the Māori ward councillor, and appointing additional advisors kind of diminishes that value, that value proposition, which I think we should be supporting. If there is not going to be a Māori ward councillor in the future, then I expect that the council, the future council at the next triennium, will have to address that issue of how it will meet that obligation now that we don't have a Māori ward representative on council at the next triennium. And perhaps that's when you introduce or appoint non-voting advisors to these councils to have input into decision making. And I say input into decision making, not decision making, because I think that is a role on these committees that requires endorsement and support from the community. So as it's currently worded, I can't support this. I also think that the 50K that was set aside 3 years ago in budgets really needs to be reevaluated again, because we're under financial pressure. It's not funded from the government remuneration authority. It's funded from council rates. If you're going to fund this, again, I would expect that we would have to offset this from an FTE count. It's worth, what, half an FTE that we would have to give up a half FTE to fund these, and that also is not in this resolution. So on that basis, I can't support what you're putting forward. I think it's inconsistent. I think it's contrary to what the public will see. The public will see this as backdoor representation. I think it undermines the Māori representation that we have around the council table. I think we get a good view. We also have input from iwi. We have iwi represent staff going out and talking to iwi, so we do hear from iwi. I think that's an anomaly to say we don't, and we're very open to hearing from iwi, but I don't think it's necessarily required for these two committees and full council. The world will not fall over for iwi if they're not on this committee, and we need to be conscious of budgets, and this saves an immediate 50k. And so, yeah, that's where I stand at the moment. But I am fully supportive of the Māori representative, and it's disappointing that we've lost that, and we'll probably have to engage advisors on these committees in a future triennium. But for now, I think we've met our obligations as staff have already acknowledged, and so I can't support this the wording of this resolution as it currently stands.
Thanks, Councillor Green, and actually really respect the matter in terms of the debate. So thank you. Is there anything else before? Oh, Councillor Kinnemoth.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
Given what I've heard around the table, I'd like to call for a division, please. And secondly, I've been here for 3 years now, plus a bit more. And when we first decided to have iwi representatives on here, and there's, to put it quite bluntly, a lot of no-shows. We had an iwi rep on the operations committee for a few attendances, but I'm now told that the resources now there within the iwi. I'd like to see a little bit more shoring up of that, and that iwi would give preference to having the iwi rep come along to these meetings as opposed to just non-attendance like we did last time, because we weren't even given an apology. It was upsetting to see that we had offered this role out there and not even a can't make it. So I'd like to see a bit more emphasis from the iwi this time around, that they are going to provide somebody or other, not necessarily one, but a backup.
So thank you, Councillor Kinnemoth. I can't tell you, I haven't got the attendance here, but remembering there was times when that rep was online, zooming into the meetings, may not have been physically here, but absolutely present on Zoom, and I don't know what those are. So I guess, Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora all. I've been sitting quietly here listening to the kōrero. Tēnā koutou e te rangatira, Matt. Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers for putting their paper up. That gives us the opportunity to consider this this take. At the first level, I look at it from a governance, diversity, participation, input level, with a range of skills that assists and enhances our community. So I come from that perspective. My first initial engagement with this community in the Tasman Council, it wasn't then the Tasman Council, was the Motueka Community Council in 1986. When the Motueka Council, this community, opposed the Māori trustee and the Crown transferring the lands of Wakatu to Wakatu Incorporation in 1976. I was a part of that journey then, and it was a very interesting journey because it reflected the attitudes of community, where they were at a point in time. And I think it's fair to say there's been significant change since 1976 in this region. that the Māori community has, especially the tangata whenua, have re-energized themselves culturally, identity, language, investment and reinvestment, as Matt has said, in this region, and are significant contributors to the region. So from my perspective, the system, and I'm part of the system, I'm a Māori ward councillor, I've got a 3-year term. The wise community out there decided that the role's term should not continue. So I'm supportive of addressing the continuity of what our reality is. My role won't be there in 2 years. We will rely on the community having another kōrero and deciding. That's the purported democratic process. I don't actually believe that other than Māori should vote for what they want in the system. We're talking about a system here, a system of democracy. And whether we want representation at the Māori ward level is, in my view, our decision. Getting back to the council and iwi representatives, I'm listening to you and I hear your kōrero, and I feel that at the management level, we certainly shouldn't be making decisions that are inconsistent, as Mark has said. And we should be ensuring any remuneration is consistent with our policy, and it should be documented in the contract. I, for one, am not keen on appointing people if they're no-shows. It's a commitment. So I hope management hear that, and that if you do approve this participation, that we do have a system that the council is happy with the recommendation from the tribal groups that wish to put their people up, and that they do have the skills, and they we can all learn from their participation. So I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to just quickly write a reply. So motion's been moved by the Chair, seconded by Councillor Maley. And I just want to come back to, this is a governance decision about governance expertise to make decisions on behalf of our district. And I guess the challenges of workload are ones that we all share, and we can have that debate in the staff room about who's on 50 cents an hour and who's on $100 an hour in terms of the people sitting around this table. And that's not the decision, that's not the discussion I want to have. And in terms of how the remuneration is set for all of our appointed members, I think that's of interest to the councillors in terms of having a look at that paper when that's due. But for today, we're looking at the continuation of a partnership that has taken some time, some years, and a lot of work from both sides, of both within council and from our iwi partners, to continue a partnership that's been in place. So the division's been called by Councillor Kinnamoss, so we'll come over to Robin O'Kells. So for new members in terms of division, your name's going to be called out, and it's a aye or no. So either in support of the motion or against the motion.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Fernyhome.
For.
Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Gully.
For.
Councillor Hume. Councillor Kinnenmonth.
Against.
Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor Woods.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor McNamara.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Maru.
For.
Carried. Sorry.
Motion's carried. Thank you. And actually, thank you for the debate and the honestness, because in terms of ways we make the whole system better, not just this decision, but being able to have frank, honest discussions And actually, Councillor Greening, I actually really respected the manner in which you presented your bit. So thank you. So we are moving on to item number 7.2. Oh, this will be a controversial paper. So 7.2 is the appointment of the deputy chairperson to the Joint Regional Transport Committee. Can I take the paper as read, and is there anybody that's happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Ellis, seconded by Councillor Maney. Any discussion? So this is in essential mechanics in terms of Councillor Ellis and I are your representatives on the Joint Regional Transport Committee. The chairship of those committees alternates. So Nelson City Council, Mayor Smith will be the chair. This is the appointment of the deputy chair. So any discussion, any questions? Otherwise I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item 7.3, Steve.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. So I'll take this very brief report as read, and principally it's the attachment that is of importance for this conversation. And in doing so, just highlight the fact that at this stage in the process, the requirements of this council being a unitary are actually very few. And the proposal that government has sought submissions on doesn't actually impact our council at all at this point. There is the possibility that at some time in the future we may have a decision before this council as to whether or not we want to establish a regional reorganisation plan. But at the moment, there's not a particular requirement for us to submit on that. So the other thing that I'd point out is that with this submission particularly, for once, the timetable aligned to enable us to both complete a draft submission from a staff perspective, but also seek the perspective of elected members prior to the closure date, which is the 20th of February. So in consultation with the Mayor, I thought that it was a good idea for us to bring forward our draft, as brief as it is, and seek any input that councillors might have. And I would say that if there is some input that you've got that goes beyond what we can capture in this forum today, please do email some things through, and I'll make sure that goes into our submission and that it gets forwarded back to councillors so that you know what it is that we've put forward. But with that said, I'm open for any conversation that you might wish to have.
Questions? Councillor Ellis and Councillor Fernyhough.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I reread this last night, so it looked different on the first reading to me, but that's a me issue. But I'm just interested in the part of the submission regarding the Crown Commissioner and the no vote veto power and the majority votes point. And we've ticked neither agree nor disagree. Can you please give some explanation as to why that was chosen? For me personally, I have great discomfort in a an unelected person in this sort of role having a veto power over decisions made by a democratically elected group. So can I just have some understanding as to why that tick was made? And I don't know, maybe other members may have a point that they would like to add to that and give some greater guidance on that issue.
So through the chair, neither agree nor disagree was essentially that we took a neutral position on it because our council won't be involved in a CTB, a combined territorial board. Therefore, there was less perspectives that we might like to add to that as officers, but more than happy to take on board the view of elected officials and how they might want to see that pan out.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that point you've made. I'm just, while at this point in time, we're not part of that system and process, given, you know, what I've seen into the past and what I see into the future, I don't know how long we'll be able to work in our little unitary bubble. So for me, that's actually quite an important point.
Councillor Fernyhough and then Councillor Greening.
Thank you. And through the chair, thanks, Councillor Ellis, because my question was almost identical to that. I also am confused about why the Crown Commissioner either has no voting rights or massive veto power or majority power. Is there any explanation as to why they can't just be given voting rights that would be equal to somebody else on the CTB?
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of. We've only got the information that was provided as part of the proposal from government. So in that section, it talks about the Crown Commissioner having no vote, veto power, or majority vote, and it postulates another option. So we based our response on what the government were telling us that they were seeking, rather than if there was any further information behind that. So I can't add more value. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Leaving aside the rather loaded title, Simplifying Local Government, I'm just wondering, how does this reform impact on us as a unitary council, if at all?
It's through you, Mr. Chair. So at the moment, it doesn't really impact us at all, because the proposal deals with the replacement of elected members on regional councils with elected mayors to the territorial authorities within those regions. And as a unitary, together with our neighbours, both Marlborough and Nelson, that means that this proposal doesn't actually affect us at all, unless we get to the point that our council chooses, as part of, if this is adopted, our council will have the opportunity to choose whether or not we want to do a regional reorganisation plan. And that's something which the government has indicated at the moment that they would see as being an optional thing for for unitaries to participate in. There are some other unitary councils around who have already expressed interest in wanting to put together a regional reorganisation plan to better suit their particular region and the needs that they see their council fulfilling. So at the moment, as it stands with what we have been presented with to respond to or provide submissions on, there's very little that involves this council at all, apart from passing across our observations and our opinions as to the unitary model and what it adds or doesn't.
Yeah, so I mean, I did struggle to understand why we're even providing feedback, given it really doesn't affect us as yet.
Probably only, good point, councillor, because we thought the same thing. Apologies through the chair. And one of the reasons why it's here is because this is quite a significant political issue at the moment across local government. And so we felt that to not participate in any form of submission probably is doing a little bit of a disservice to what we're here to do. But as you can see from the comments that are in there, our submission is very brief and it really only touches around the edges. But at least we're putting a submission in and making our mark. But I don't disagree with your sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think we're not really involved. I think we're kind of, we may be seen by the councillors as shooting from afar. I'm not sure how well that will go down, but if we're being really neutral, maybe it won't be too upsetting for some. But I think it really is a regional council issue. And my preference was to stay out of it and let the regional councils put in their submissions. They're the ones that really value. They'll look at us and go, well, you know, you're a unitary council. Thanks very much. Kind of a waste of time, really. So I did think it was a bit of a waste of time for staff time and maybe seen by the councils as trying to say something, although we don't seem to have said much anyway. So yeah, just my observations.
Like I say, don't disagree with your perspective at all. One of the things that did come out of it was which we have raised in a couple of areas, is the potential for conflict, I suppose you could say, between the responsibilities of a regional and a territorial. And we have that experience at the moment in how we deal with our regulatory function, for example, and how that sometimes comes into conflict with our responsibilities as a TA. So we did think that there was value in putting that through. And also we've got some comments in there about mayors of territorial authorities are often elected by the population based on their performance as a territorial authority leader, and putting them into the space where they've got to act in terms of a regional council is something that, had that been a question at the time of voting, they might not have been the successful mayoral candidate. So we just highlighted those couple of points.
Thank you, Councillor McNamara, then Morgan, then Butler.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
To be honest, I find it quite derogatory that we would say that about those mayors. I don't think we need to say that about them. I'm happy to support Councillor Ellis's observation that powers of, I don't think the powers of the appointed people need to be forefront. My other question, or my question is, of all of the submissions we're apparently making currently, I'm wondering why this is the one that was brought to us that really doesn't affect us. Are there not others still in process that perhaps our attention would have been better turned to?
There are a number of things that we submit on all the time. As I said at the outset when I tabled the paper, the timing for this one was such that it aligned perfectly with this meeting, so that we could both get your feedback before the meeting and then make our submission before the closing. Councillors will be aware that in a number of instances submissions are made and then we seek retrospective conversation with councillors. That's not our desired approach, but sometimes the timeline just doesn't fit for us in that regard. So this one did work out, which is why it's here. It's quite political in nature, and it's certainly a topic that is being discussed across the country at the moment. So we took the opportunity to bring it to you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. I'm thankful we've actually had this submission because I don't look at these matters in isolation. You look at the trend of where the discussion is, and whether we like it or not, this government or future governments are going to continue to look at local authorities because we are a significant part of the economy. We preside over significant resources, and they want us to deliver to communities benefit, productivity and effectiveness. So they're going to look at us, and it's good to put submissions in that, in this case, it's quite neutral, that gives a view, because don't think there's not going to be no change going forward. There will be change going forward. And I'm a great believer in positioning for change. You put your view in and you build on it over time. So not at things in isolation. You don't get achievement of long-term things without continually to position and work away on it. So thanks for the submission. It was a relatively neutral one, and I think it's it's good that we can engage and have that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Butler, and we haven't had a mover or seconder yet, and I guess whoever that person is there any feedback in terms of being collated that, or we just crossed it out?
Okay, thanks, Brent. I'm happy to move. I would thanks Steve for your commentary, because that's actually what I was going to that's the line I was going along, and I think that as a long experienced unitary council, then I think that we have an obligation to provide advice and commentary on our experience. And I would the thought that comes to me as regards that is the risk of uneven resource spending of resources on territorial as opposed to the regional function. And I think this has happened off and on while Tasman has been a unitary council. So I think that I would like to see us have some comment in our submission about how that actually needs to be managed, because there is a risk in the absence of ring fencing that some regional functions actually just fall by the wayside because of lack of funding. So yeah, happy to move.
Thanks, Councillor Butler. Are you just moving the receipt of the report, or did you want to capture your last statement in that motion under 2.1?
Oh, well, could I just maybe offline send something to Steve?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye.
Councillor Krimhoff, don't leave us, stay there.
Thank you. Through the chair, and I like the comments that Councillor Morgan has been stating, and I thoroughly agree with them. good perception and like it. I've tried to read the report. This is for you now, Steve, Mr. Manager. I can't remember seeing in there whether there was any commentary about what our fellow neighbours Nelson and Marlborough are doing in the same space. Are they doing something similar to us, and do they have any issues with what's going on?
Through the chair, made the submission on behalf of our council and through this process bringing it before elected members, not seeking to comment positively, negatively or otherwise on what our neighbouring councils might do. I am aware of some views within Nelson City Council with respect to regional reorganisation plans, but essentially it's a path that they're taking at the moment, and it hasn't materialised any further. And it's unlikely to whilst it's at this stage, and noting that we're both unitaries, so we've got very little skin in the game at the moment.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
Yeah, okay, I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnemoth. So any other questions? Moved by Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor Kinnemoth. All those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Brings us to item 7.4, page 52. Hopefully your tablets just haven't had a restart like mine just did. Welcome, Amy and Steve.
Good morning. I would just like to start with an apology and a correction on the report. So on the front page in the summary, it says, depending on uptake, a cost of up to. It should say 170,000. That's correct in the financial section, just not on that front page. And then it also incorrectly says 100,000 in section 12.2.1, which should be 170,000. So that's the maximum uptake, assuming the full allowance and the full monitoring costs are taken up by all elected members, including community board members. So that's the maximum that the allowance would cost. And the other thing that's mentioned in the report is that we were to speak to the Remuneration Authority, which we have done now. They haven't provided really any additional information that was already provided in the report, but they have emphasised the importance of the security threat and risk assessment, which is undertaken to determine what would be appropriate home security system and monitoring for the particular situation the elected member is in. I'll take the rest of the report as read, if that's okay, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? So remembering this is a policy that's been, this has come out of the Remuneration Authority's determination in terms of the risk of elected members in some parts of our country and some parts of our region, and it is an allowance there if it is needed. So that, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, that process is if I have personal concerns, then in our case, I talk to Steve and there's an assessment done and it's determined whether there's a system that may be able to help. So it's not everybody line up for their share of $170,000 to get a home security system and alarms and monitoring and that. It is there for the areas where there is absolute risk and that conversation, that assessment's been done. But in terms of being absolutely transparent, the total liability that would sit there if it occurred that every member around this table needed such care and support would be $170,000. I don't think I'm imagining anywhere near that, but I don't know. Who knows what tomorrow brings? So any questions? Councillor Kinnemoth.
I'm happy to move.
So moved by Councillor Kinnemoth, Councillor Greening, and then Councillor Ellis.
Kind of related, so I hope you'll bear with me, Mr. Chair. I think on the 11th of December, we looked at the terms of reference for delegations, and in that we had a discussion around whether Waimea South would still be required to be part of those terms of reference, and I was just wondering whether staff have now turned their mind to that and have come back or will be coming back with clarity around that. I note that in this delegation it still refers to 2 councillors on the Waimea South Facility Committee, but I'm just wanting an indication, because we were told that that will be looked at and we would be coming back to that.
Sorry, Councillor Greening, are we on the home security allowances for elected members, 7.4?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were moving to the delegations. Apologies.
No, sorry. That's all right. I thought I'd missed something. No.
That's right.
That's right. Councillor Woods.
Yes, thank you, Amy. What is the current uptake? I know we've got provisional numbers, but is there a hard number at the moment?
Oh, we've had no requests because the approval of the allowance within the policy was subject to us coming back from a report. So no one has currently requested, although I think we've had sort of a few people indicate their interest in the in taking up the allowance. Yeah.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much for the paper. I actually find it quite sad that we're having to discuss a nature of this service in the council and our leadership. Perhaps say that you could say that's the time. I'm still sad about it. The only issue I had with it really was the authority for sign off. I see it's done by the Chief Operating Officer. Is it being proposed that there'll be a recommendation either to audit or the council? I misunderstood. Well, it's not clear.
No, we hadn't recommended that through the chair. The thoughts were that the risk assessment would be a confidential. It's about your personal circumstances and your home and things like that, and that it would really be operational. We would look at the risk assessment and then the chief and provide a recommendation, and then it would be signed off by the coup.
Okay, yeah. I understand. I'm concerned about that approach. If there's any threats or violence to my fellow councillors or management for that matter, I would expect to know in my role as a councillor, and especially improving money for security. So I'll just put that on the table. I don't support the non-advice to the council on this policy. Kia ora.
I think it's Councillor Morgan. Councillor Woods. Did I have Did I have somebody else? Yeah, Board Member Hart.
Thank you, through the chair. So if this offer was taken up by an elected member and then at the end of the term, is that security system then removed, or is it yours for life sort of thing?
Through the chair, the intention is that it is owned by the elected member whose home it or rental property it is put into. It simplifies things. The risk doesn't always go away immediately when you leave council, and it means that if we damage the property or something is not damaged, but you might be putting screws and things into the property, then it would potentially cost us to remove it. The home security system could be several years old, at which point it's not worth much, and then we would then have to pay to put it in someone else's home, which potentially might not be. So the idea is, yes, that it would then belong to the elected member. That does mean that you potentially would need to include it in your tax return or talk to your accountant about the receipt of that as part of your tax. Yeah.
Mr. Manners, then Councillor Ellis.
I was just going to add in response to the question from Councillor Morgan and also perhaps to you, Board Member Hutt. We've still got a couple of hurdles that we need to cross over with our finance team about how we deal with that end of life situation, because at the moment we have a policy that doesn't provide for passing on technology to departing staff or elected members. So we're going to come back and revisit that. But as Amy's just pointed out, the practicalities of removing a security system after 3 years and its value is negligible. So we need to solve that problem. And with respect to the privacy of elected members who choose to take up the home security options, we currently have a regular in-committee conversation at Audit and Risk, which talks about psychosocial and personal risk, both to staff and elected members. So if there was a requirement to report back to elected members, I could envisage that it would come through that part of our governance accountability.
Councillor Ellis and Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I've lost track. Do you need a seconder? Right, I would like to second it. I'm actually going to be supporting this as well. I think it's really important that we have a diverse group of people around our table, and I feel that perhaps there's one gender that's pretty well represented around this table at the moment, and talking to people in the community, a large part of that includes the risk, especially to female members, and it is actually prevents people from standing in the first place, and that is the feedback I received during the campaign. And any data suggests that women especially are the subject of these types of threats. They are, sometimes the people making them think they're just a thing that they put out there, but they are a real thing in reality. I think also looking into the future that we don't know what may come, and to have this set up and available. I appreciate that we will have a set criteria, because it is not something that I think needs to be a standard course for an elected representative to have. So that I find that's quite reassuring. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I like the fact that the Remuneration Authority actually is caring about the well-being of us elected members. Kei te pai, that is a huge step in the right direction. But what I don't get is how we got to security cameras. Because for me, that could be a funeral or an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Because once you've gone back to look at footage, you can't undo what's happened. So as much as I appreciate that this looks at everybody's well-being and you can put your name forward to say whether you want this or not, what other resources are available for the well-being of elected members other than having to then use surveillance on my house on a camera that I may choose or not choose to have, which wouldn't have changed an outcome potentially that could or could not happen?
Councillor, I think two things. Cameras may be included in an alarm system, or just what are the system parameters and what other availability of support is there?
Through the chair, I understand the risk you talk about. We don't want to be retrospective. There are, and that's why the security and threat assessment is really important, to understand the risks that are posed to you and whether actually a home security system will actually make any difference. But there are options. So a static security camera, which is just recording things, is probably not going to reduce your risk. However, there are options like you talk about doorbell cameras and other things that can tell you who's at the door, or if people have been visiting your property, which can be used in other manners. There is also, while not included within the funding amounts print here, there is an allowance for additional security measures in the remuneration authority's determination, which if something was identified as part of the home security system, as part of the assessment, would be appropriate for you to help your security, then we could request approval for those items, whatever that might be.
Thank you. Any other questions? I hear a potential reporting mechanism through audit and risk. I'm nervous about the detail of that reporting. I'm interested in the numbers because as we become public figures and more in the public, it doesn't necessarily, it's our interaction with the community and our work that puts an individual at risk, but it means the individual is more public to somebody that may have been there sometime in the past for some other reason. So it's not necessarily just linked to your interaction as a councillor and the decisions you make at a stable, but just the publicness of your profile in terms of opens you up very much to the wider community. Or however long there has been. So with that, it's moved by Councillor Kinnamoth, seconded by Councillor Ellis. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we go to 7.5. This is the Mayor's update. I'll move that we take it as read. Is there a seconder? Councillor McNamara. Please don't ask me any questions in the Mayor's report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. With that, if I can please move into public excluded. So I'm happy to move that the public exclude. I think where's the resolution card over here? I have to read this, don't I? that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting. The general subject of each matter is to be considered while the public is excluded. The reason for passing this resolution in relation to each matter and the specific grounds under section 48(1) of the Local Government and Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 for the passing of this resolution follows. This resolution is made in reliance on section 48(1)(a) of the Local Government and Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 and the particular interests or interests protected by section 6 or section 7 of the Act, which would prejudice by holding or the whole or relevant part of the proceedings in a meeting in public. My goodness, I'm happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor McNamara, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. So we will adjourn for 15 minutes for morning tea, come back into public excluded. And thank you.